Welcome back to the Budget Gamer channel, where we bring you critical and in-depth reviews of just about every indie game we can get our hands on, and today we're going to be taking a look at Back in 1995 for the Nintendo Switch. And if you've seen or heard anything about Back in 1995, you know it touts itself to be, and I absolutely hate this expression, a love letter to fill in the blank. But as you can easily tell from the game footage, Back in 1995 actually is a very era-accurate rendition of a classic horror survival title. And drawing upon the classic tropes from games like Alone in the Dark, Resident Evil, or Silent Hill, it actually has a lot to work with, but raises its own standard pretty high. The story in Back in 1995 actually is really intriguing. We start off the game with an amnesiac character who doesn't really know what his circumstances are or even where he is, but he knows that he needs to make it to this tower sitting on the horizon. And it's playing through the game and interacting with a very sparse handful of survivors that we start to learn a little bit more about the situation. And as we find through reading several documents strewn throughout the game, apparently the world is in a state of transition. Eons and eons ago, apparently it was a two-dimensional existence that only recently has become three-dimensional and now is transitioning into the fourth. And it's this new blending of our three-dimensional reality with the fourth dimension that has unleashed these terrible monsters into our existence, bringing on some sort of pseudo-apocalypse. But while this is actually pretty interesting, it's about as far as the story will ever go, so we should probably just move into the gameplay. Back in 1995 not only uses the visual and audio horror tropes of some of those classic titles, but also in its mechanical controls. Using dynamic or tank controls as it's sometimes called, pressing the forward button will always move your character forward in whichever direction it's facing, and additionally left and right command controls will move your character to its left or its right. And while this is definitely true to the horror survival genre, especially in the era of the 90s, dynamic controls as well as fixed camera angles really do sometimes make navigating the game a bit of a struggle. Other than that, as you help out a handful of NPCs throughout the game, because that's just what we do, you'll be able to acquire weapons such as wrenches, pistols, and shotguns to help you combat these fourth-dimensional monsters, as well as pain medications to help support your health. Additionally, ammo for each of these weapons is scattered liberally throughout the game, so you don't really have to worry too much about running out, and combating the monster creatures is more of an optional task. There is no ability to run in the game, and you do move forward at pretty much a crawl, but thankfully so do the fourth-dimensional beasts. And while they do, thank God, eventually transition from looking like upside-down roasted chickens, their attack patterns are consistently slow and their visual fields are very, very small. Additionally, all attacks for the player and monster characters take quite a while to actually execute, so it's really easy just to maneuver your way around them and make it all the way to the end of the game. But that being said, actually finding your way to the end of the game might be a more difficult task than making it through all the monsters. The visuals for Back in 1995 aren't only supposed to be reminiscent of classic gaming in their polygon count, but also in the CRT and CRT with noise filters, which while intentionally reminiscent of classic tube televisions, really do work to hide some pivotal details from the already highly pixelated scenery. So if you're intending to play the game with either of these filters active, you can expect to add a couple hours of game time just for the added need of exploration. Because in all honesty, even with none of these filters active, with the fixed camera angles and the stretching of the polygons, finding any hidden keys or any items you might need to fix a puzzle or open a door is already difficult enough. Moving on to the game's music, it definitely has that classic kind of eerie feel, but it also falls a little bit short. And while I'm not sure if it was actually intentional, it seems that the game's soundtrack doesn't loop, so you're actually left playing most of the game in silence. But that is, of course, if you're discounting the repetitious sound effects for walking, as well as the banging on pipe sound for all menu actions. But all in all, being honest, considering every aspect of Back in 1995, it's not a completely bad game. The movements are fluid, and you can play through it really quickly, which might be good for anyone who's trophy seeking. But as far as an actual tribute to the types of games that got us so absorbed in investing ourselves into them in the past, Back in 1995 seems to lack almost all of that. The beasts that you confront aren't scary, items aren't scarce, there's really no need to have any combat that actually makes you in fear for your life as a player. And even playing the game all the way through and seeing some special unveils by the developer, which, might be worth noting, the game feels devoid of feeling. You don't really discover anything even after beating the game, and there doesn't really seem to be any intrinsic need for the player to invest themselves, which was the entire point of creating the game. And if I'm being completely transparent, instead of making me remember the really great games like Silent Hill and Alone in the Dark, Back in 1995 made me remember all the really bad spin-offs that I really wish I could have got my money back for. And on that note, I suppose if you are an avid fan of the classic horror survival genre and you want to tiptoe sort of quasi-parallel to memory lane, this might be a game that you would kind of enjoy playing. However, for everyone else, I think it's going to be a pretty solid hard pass. And while I really do hate to end on a negative note, as I'm sure you know if you've watched this channel, all of that does about wrap up the review of Back in 1995 for the Nintendo Switch. So if you enjoyed the review or found it helpful, feel free to throw me a like or a comment to show your support, and don't forget to click that little bell icon when you subscribe to stay updated with the latest content. As you can see, there are new and unique indies coming out literally every single day, so there's always going to be some new game to find out about right here. But if you want to see what I'm up to or chat with fellow gamers about all these awesome indies coming out, you can click any of the links in our channel's banner for Instagram, Twitter, Discord, or even Patreon. But anyway, this has been Budget Gamer, so as always, thanks for watching.